Hi guys, Stu here with a new video, and this video will be my updated Soul Shuffle tier list video for, again, 10.1.5, but the update with the patch notes that changed a lot of things, like for Boomkins, for Shadow Priest, a few nerfs, but it's really minimal. A lot of nerfs on Augmentation Evoker actually, and it actually changed a bit on how they play, or at least how it feels, how they play. A few buffs to Arms and Fury, and other changes I actually discussed in two videos. One the Friday, and the other one it was on Monday, Tuesday morning really, and we discussed about the extra changes that they actually made for this patch. Overall, the meta has changed, but not too much. I feel like it's still heavily around Boomkins, heavily around Shadow Priests. Augmentation Evoker has been calmed down, but I think it's still there. I don't think like it's reigning supreme anymore. I do still want to put a god here because I do feel there is still a god tier out there. But I think that the classes are a bit more closer than previously. Now, I want to talk class by class. I want to start with Warlocks. I kind of overestimated Destruction Warlock in my previous video. I feel like Destruction Warlock is just not it right now. I'm a bit disappointed, and feels like it's for Soul Shuffle, again, threes, yes, you have Caustic Leaves where you can make it work with a Frost Mage, and you're pretty dependent from each other. Like, I think Frost Mage is loving Destruction Warlocks and Demonology Warlocks, and also a bit of Affliction Warlock. The Destruction Warlock actually really loves Frost Mage, Elemental Shaman, and Shadow Priest. Those are the three ones that are actually very good for Destruction Warlock, but it's basically because on how Caustic Leaves are actually played, and not really how Destruction Warlock is currently. I feel like Destruction Warlock is B tier ish. I would even want to put it in C tier. B tier means that it is actually still good. It's average to good. It's not like underpowered, which is C tier, and D tier, which is garbage. B tier is like, look, you can still make it work in Soul Shuffle, but you have to work very hard. You're very squishy because the nerfs that they actually wanted to make for Demonology Warlock actually tripled down onto Destruction Warlock and Affliction Warlock. I feel like your casted abilities, which is Chaos Bot and Incinerate, actually hits for less than previous in 10.1. I also think, personally, I did more damage in season 1 than in season 2, which the HP pools actually like got augmented, so it means that as a whole, Destruction Warlock doesn't feel as dominant as it should, as it could be and should be, because you're still a casting caster. You're not really purely around instants. They actually nerfed a lot of instants in 10.1 as well, and also in the following patches. And I feel like currently Destruction Warlock, they have only one build that they can only rely on, and it feels like still they kind of miss something to make them, I would say, meta. Right now, it's not meta. I think in Soul Shuffle, you can pretty much train down the Destruction Warlock, and it's highly dependent on the healer to actually like win those games. If a healer doesn't know how to heal, the aforementioned Warlock, it becomes very hard. As the same for Affliction Warlock, I'm really still confident to say that in Soul Shuffle, it is a underpowered spec. I can maybe put it in B tier because I can see how people cannot really react on Affliction Warlocks, but it's actually like just a one school spellcaster. It's actually very easy to kick a Affliction Warlock. It's actually easy to just CC the Warlock if you feel like, look, he cannot be kicked. Let's CC him with stuns, micro CCs, even fears, or whatever you can actually throw at them. They're also still very squishy because of the nature of how they work, and I feel like all the buffs that I actually did on Unstable Affliction actually is offsetted by the PvP talent that you actually have to take, minus 25% on Unstable Affliction. And I even want to make a video in the future where I'm going to compare Feral Druids to Affliction Warlock. And yes, it is silly, but no, it is not unrealistic. I still think the dots are just hitting for too little to actually be substantial. And I feel like all the damage comes from Summon Observer, which people forget to actually kill most of the time. Like the laser beam that they're doing is like huge damage versus casters, and people are like ignoring it. but often not that results for a lot of damage. I also feel like people just do not know how to react to Soul Rot, and they do not know how to react on Drain Life and the drains in general, which is the one part that actually makes Affliction Warlock very scary, but that's the only part that actually makes Affliction Warlock scary. For me, I'm going to put it in C tier. I want to maybe put it in B tier at the end of the video, depending on where I'm putting on the other specs, but I feel like it's really not that strong right now. I think it's underpowered and just is basically how the spec is functioning. Yes, in 3v3 you can make it work because you can play dampening specs, dampening comps, which again are the more harder comps to play currently in this current landscape. But I think like Affliction Warlock is just not alright. And Haunt, the buff for Haunt, you can just forget it, man. It is doing not a lot of damage for what it actually does, and you will have to sacrifice a lot of talents to get like some substantial damage from Hound. I'm speaking of like literally like gimping yourself on Soul Rot or gimping yourself on Unstable Affliction, which is already not hitting for a lot. So for me to see it here. And Demonology Warlock, I do think it's still something that is more playable because of the CC that you have. I think it's A tier. The damage, they have a lot more pets available. I also think the Foresight is actually very good for Demonology Warlock compared to other specs. And in general, I think they kind of feel alright to play since the changes that they made. And yes, you have to cast more, but I think a lot more Demonology Warlocks actually know now how to cast, and they know that look, we're not like the Demonology Warlock from season 1. Season 2 we will have to cast more, but we do more damage from our pets like as a whole. So think they're like pretty much the best spec for Warlocks at the moment, at least that's how I see. And they're also still the most tankier spec out there for Warlocks. So if you want to survive and you want to do CC, you want to actually win games, I think the Demonology Warlock is one of those specs. Let's talk about right now Evokers. I want to talk about Evokers really quickly. I think Devastation Evoker is they got a buff on Fire Breath. I still think it's very gimmicky. I'm hesitating to put it in C or D tier, really. You do see it on the ladder. Like, a lot of Devastation Evokers now just play Augmentation because there is no real reason to play Devastation, let's be honest. They just do kind of the same. They still do more damage than Augmentation, I'm not going to lie. But the burst potential is kind of the same, but they also lose a lot of utility, a lot of the defensive like things that Augmentation Evoker can give. I'm going to put it in C tier right now. I do feel like it's a D tier spec, but for me, I'm going to put it in C tier just because I feel like there are all these tier specs that are not faring correctly in Soul Shuffle. Augmentation Evoker is going to be, they were gods here in my books. Now I think they are pretty close to the S or the A tier. I'm going to do a separate tier. I know I'm going to do a lot of tiers. I'm very sorry, but I think I have to separate them because I think they are now currently pretty much A plus. I think they are A plus. I think it's fair. They have a lot less healing. It does seem like we can actually kill a lot faster Augmentation Evoker, and they are now like they have to play differently than previous, like the previous iteration, which is like 1 week ago. Now they cannot play like a tank. They do die. They do heal still quite a bit, but they heal less, and it does feel in matches. Now, am I saying that it is now like not out of the meta? I think it's still meta. I think there's still like comps out there that actually benefits hugely from having an Augmentation Evoker, and they still do a lot of damage by themselves, but also by proxy. Blistering Scales, for example, does still a lot of damage for a lot of melees that actually are the targets. For example, I'm thinking about like Fury Warriors, I'm thinking about like Havoc Demon Hunters, I'm thinking about like all those specs that actually are like targets in arenas. That is actually a good thing for them. But anyways, Preservation Evoker, I think they're actually not that bad in Soul Shuffle. I do feel like they're very good. They have something out there. I think it's because of the meta that actually shaped towards the Preservation Evoker. It's slippery. It's not really easy to catch. It's also not easy to CC. And yes, you can sometimes just switch on the Preservation Evoker and destroy him. But it's very hard to actually like put the nail on the thing about like healers. I think healers the balancing between heals is like as close as ever. There are like a few outliers here and there, but I think preservation is like probably my top 3 healers, so I'm going to put it in A tier for now. Again, do not jump conclusions. I think I'm going to like again do a rebalancing at the end of the video, but all the explanation is while the video is up, so please do watch the whole video so you know why I'm actually explaining on certain tiers. I think like currently the balancing on healers is probably around the A plus, A and B tier. There's no real clear S tier right now in my books, but I think like A tier is a fair shot for a top 3 healer in my opinion. I want to talk about shamans. I think Restoration Shaman has jumped tiers for me. I think it's actually good in social. I think it has a lot of fighting power, a lot of offensive power. They also got a buff on the healing parts as well, which is a good thing. I do feel like it feels good to play with current pace. They actually do not lose on mana games, so that is a huge USP in this current landscape where you can actually survive a lot of damage. And I think currently they are faring correctly. Now, is it because of the meta or is it because of the nerfs on the Holy Paladin and other like things that are actually are up in the air? I do not know. I do know that Resto Shamans do feel good. I do play a lot of Resto Shaman these days, but also I play with a lot of Resto Shamans like in my solo shuffle games. I see a lot more Resto Shamans in general. I think having Purge is a great thing for Holy Paladin because you can actually purge the buffs off, and that actually is a good thing. You also have a lot of like those interrupts that you can actually do, and yes, interrupting is not always worth it, but if you do interrupt a thing and then hex, that's actually a good follow-up. And even though like interrupting is only like 1 GCD worth it, if you can have a hex beat in between, it can actually bring a lot of kills. Also, I think like having the totems heal while you're CC'd, and yes, those totems are breakable, but then it's your job to actually like hide those totems. So I think they do are like A tier in my books right now currently. I think Elemental Shaman is still A tier. I think they are still very potent, very strong. I'm currently playing the Lava Burst build pretty much like flinging instance, which is not really always what I wanted to do. I thought like a lightning build would be quite interesting, but I think like doing Lava Bursts like instantly is something that is quite good, even though your damage is a bit off because of the PvP talent not counting towards your damage, because like the 45% is not something you will have. Um, but I think having instance instead of getting like interrupted on your lava burst is actually like a good thing. So currently I think it's a good spec. I think it's also very annoying to deal with. They have purge, they have like good off heals too, which is actually a good thing. But I do feel like as a hybrid, they have like a lot of USPs, unique selling points, if you do not know, in solo shuffles to actually be successful. I think Enhancement Shaman, um, I know I'm getting a lot of flag for it. I don't think it's like above A tier or below A tier. I think it's just A tier. The reason is, again, we're doing melees, ranged, and healers. The reason why I put them at A tier is because they have like those one-shot potentials. Now, it is counterable if you do know that the guy is playing Ascendance. Look, you just have to stop it by pressing a CD or by pressing stuns or disarm or whatever you can actually do to stop that. It's a 3-minute CD. If they are not successful, they will just do less damage for the whole match. Yes, they can kill with a few things, but I do feel like it's gimmicky right now. I do want them to actually step away from the RNGs. I do want them to actually put Ascendance on a 2-minute CD, for example, which is more acceptable. But overall, I think they are quite good. I think the meta is fair, like fairing them correctly. They can actually kill on the whim if they really want to, if they actually have all the stars aligning. But again, it's also very hard to not stop an enhancement shaman. If you see someone like again, if you have weak auras or whatever, you can actually see that coming and you can actually stop them with CC. It's like not really an unstoppable thing out there. It's not like a Bladestorm, for example, where you cannot CC them. And Bladestorm is not hitting for much really. but Enhancement Shaman, if you don't stop him and you ignore him and you are like at the end of the blade and you don't have a CD, yes, you're going to get punished, but that's how it is with current meta from retail. I want to talk about rogues real quick. I think sub rogues these days they are still very strong, but it's very hard to judge them. I think sub rogue they have a burst potential. They can actually win because of how tanky they are, and they can actually enable a lot of classes. I think that's probably why you can actually have a lot of success. You have to know as a sub rogue that you are not the only one killing the enemies. You have double vanish. You have CDR every time you're going to vanish, which is quite nice for CDs. You're very tanky and you can play around that, and you can really make it your life easier with cast sequences of macros where you can just press one button and it will do everything for you. You press that all the time. Even Polymore made a video about it. I use that for my sub rogue and it actually works pretty well. But I think you can have success if you actually know that, look, you have teammates, play around them, and yes, people can just ruin your DRs. It is what it is. I think that's the only problem a sub can have currently, is because other people can actually ruin your DRs. I think it's kind of is a okay meta for a sub. I'm going to put it in A tier right now purely because like they have Retribution Paladins to face and Holy Paladin to face, and in solo shuffle you do not get like 2 or 3 attempts, or like you don't get 3 attempts to actually win a game. Sometimes it's only like a second attempt, and there is still a Bob, there is still a Divine Shield, there is still Sank there. So you have to use your perfect momentum to actually kill someone, which is not always easy as a sub rogue. Again, A tier is meta. A plus is like above the meta, and S tier is like S tier, and then God tier is like the best classes out there. I don't even know if there is like a God tier really, but again, we'll see at the end of the video how I will try to respond to it. I think Assassination Rogue is going to be very underpowered. I think it's C tier. I might even put it in D tier. I think it's an abomination of a spec right now. They need a rework, and they know they're going to rework Assassination Outlaw. I think also Subtlety Rogue. Um, I think Deathmark is a huge miss. Should go back to Vendetta. I know that Vendetta was boring, but I think it's too easy to stop, and there's too much power into it. So either just remove it and put power into their kit. For example, mutilate should finally hit for something. Right now, mutilate hits for nothing. It hits for less than a slam for an arms warrior, which is pretty laughable. Let's be honest. Yes, there are like there are a few things that are behind mutilate, but it's just a combo points like generator. That's it. And it's not doing too much, unfortunately. Even ambush for assassination doesn't do too much. So again, they need to change something. I think by removing Deathmark, which would be the good play, and put something else, even if it's generic, and put more power to their kit, I think they might be like faring better. But I think like having them put all the dots up, which is again very hard because again people can stop you. You have also like to deal with like bobs and things that can just straight remove all the hard work you've put out. So it's a bit like hard for them to actually like climb currently. Outlaw Rogue, I think it's like the worst spec. Yes, you have moments where you can burst for 300k. I already saw that, but I think it's still bad. I think it's just as a sub rogue but worse. That's how I see. It's a combination of assassination and sub rogue but worse. That's how I can actually describe it. I think it's also very squishy. If you've known Shadowlands, it was actually a tank rogue spec. Right now, it is just like one of the squishiest specs for rogues. Sub rogue being more tankier than a outlaw rogue is actually like telling you that outlaw rogue is just not working as a spec in PvP. I think in PvE, I guess it can work because of like Blade Fury and such, but I think in PvP there is too much power into Blade Fury, which is the same problem that Destruction has with a Havoc. When Havoc is strong, it means that the single target potential should be lower because you have Havoc. And it does feel like that with Auto Rogue. Like they cannot buff single target too much because there is Blade Fury that can actually hit multiple targets, and the CD is very low. So I think a rework is and will be needed to actually make them good in PvP without being like tanky, right? Let's talk about DKs. I think DKs is a popular conversation. I think people like saying that Unholy DK is the best melee out there, which I disagree. I do think the meta helps them enormously. I think it's actually a good spec. I think it's over the meta. I do think it's still A plus. Um, the meta is actually playing for them. I think a lot of specs actually are very synergic with the Unholy DK. As an Unholy DK, you can do insane damage, which I think people have like some memory losses, but the damage of Unholy Decay was always high. Minions and dots were actually hitting for a lot. Yes, it is harder to read it on the details damage meters because you had like 10 pets, like 10 literal ghouls hitting the target, and yes, they did all 10k at the same time, and it will not be read as 100k, but it will be read 10k and then with multiple hits. Right now, you can just do one hit and 100k, which is quite the same, really. But the Unholy Decay is more in power, so you cannot really root the pets off. You cannot run away from the pets. The Unholy Decay will be able to actually just hit with Clown Shadows and have lots of hits, lots of damage, and it will feel better for the Unholy Decay. The good thing is about Unholy Decay right now is the physical damage dealers are a bit down, except one, which I'm going to discuss after we discuss the DKs. But right now, Unholy Decay is for me A plus. I think it's a very good spec. I think they have what it needs to actually be successful with classes and against classes, and they also are okay versus melees in current landscape because you're not facing in full melee lobbies. But if you see one arms warrior, you're the Unholy DK and you're facing like two classes, like for example Elemental Shaman and then Destruction Warlock, yes, the Unholy DK will fare better because you actually have lots of synergies and you have lots of ways you can actually win the game. But if you're facing like Arms Warrior, Fury Warrior, and then let's say a Feral Druid, your Unholy DK will not exist in that lobby, for example. So you have to see it with perspective. I don't think they are like S or God here because of that reason, because they are still like the slim chance where you're facing your enemies in one lobby and you're going to get destroyed. So it doesn't mean that they are like the absolute meta. They just fare very well in that very meta. But Frost Decay, for example, is a horrible spec. I've played it on stream. Seen a lot of like streams as well. I think they just do not work because Pillar of Frost is too easy to stop, and even Pillar of Frost doesn't hit for too much anymore. It does the same damage as in season one when the HP pools actually are higher. It means that they are actually doing less damage comparatively with season one, which is actually not a good thing for a spec like Frost Decay, where you actually are just your burst. If your burst is not that okay, then unfortunately the spec is not okay. So they do need a rework as well. I don't think like putting a 50% buff on damage, for example, 20% or 10% would change anything. I think it just purely is a problem with how they are as a spec. You can buff them like 20% or 15% more, they would be busted. That would not help anything. We do not want a spec to be God tier as well. We do not want to have a spec at D tier as well. So when the situation occurs where you are going to buff it, it jumps at S tier, and whenever you're nerfing, it jumps at D tier, then it just is like a rework signal. You just need to rework it so you can actually buff it and nerf it correctly. Like for example, Subrogue, the problem is you cannot buff it and you can nerf it without making it useless or OP. So what do you need to do? Shift the damage proportions, shift the kits a bit so that they actually are nerfable and buffable. For example, a class that is like that is, for example, Arms Warrior. You can buff it a bit. It will be S tier, but you can nerf it a bit. It will not be D tier, for example. So they have like some jumps that they can do, but they are not going to jump from God tier to D tier and D tier from the God tier. Anyways, let's talk about the best melee, which I think is S tier, Windwalkers. I think Windwalkers are very strong. They have tools, they are more tanky, they're very annoying to deal with actually. They are actually staying into fights and they can actually deal some pretty hefty damage. They also are quite good in this current meta because of the capacities that they can actually deal lots of CC and damage to classes as well. The natural enemies of a Windwalker is actually like, for example, like pets and hunters, for example, where you can actually like sack and then they will not crit. And yes, you can CC the pet and then do your damage, which is a possibility. But a good hunter will know that, look, if your pet is not leg swept, just do your sack and you're going to be fine. I think also like Fury Warriors and Arms Warrior, although they do suffer sometimes versus a Windwalker because of the disarm, because of Fist of Fury, I think them being lower makes them actually like a bit more scary as a spec. I think just in general, the damage that they did to the debuffs that they did to the consistent damage of Windwalkers actually is a good thing for them in PvP. And I think currently they are deserving as the #1 spot for physical damage dealers, at least melee damage dealers. Um, Mistweaver. I think Mistweaver is very hard to judge. I think personally, I'm going to put it in B tier for the reason that they do not have too much say on how the game will occur. They can get heavily interrupted and it's over, or they can actually just get like the best caster lobbies where they can actually uninterruptedly heal for no problem and they're going to be fine. You can also play Fistweaver, but I've seen that it's also a lot easier to stop the Fistweaver right now with the current meta because there are casters. It's much easier to kite a Fistweaver and to stop their healing pretty hard with CC. Even though the CC is like a root, they will feel the current way to not heal as a Fistweaver. So I think B tier is okay. I think it's an okay healer. It's a good healer. I think versus the Preservation Evoker is actually very hard for them. Versus the Resto Shaman is also very hard for them. I think just in general, they're not like that great. Let's talk about warriors. So no surprise, I think the buffs were like quite placebo. I tested Fury, I tested Arms. The Bladestorm buffs are nice in theory, but you're not sitting in full Bladestorms anyways as an Arms warrior. People are reading the 40% Bladestorm and they are very scary, but no Arms warrior really sits the whole Bladestorm. It just does less damage at your rotational spells. What's good about Bladestorm is you're not CCable, but you're using it to get out of CC or to like prevent a CC, for example. If you're like preventing a kidney shot and you're bladestorming at the same time, yes, the kidney shot isn't going to apply, for example. But that's not the issue. Like a frost mage versus you're going to bladestorm out of roots. You're not going to bladestorm to do huge damage. And even then, they can just ice block. And even then, they can just blink. And then you're forced to actually stop it to get a charge. So the damage is not a non-factor, especially since they nerfed the unhinged moral strike, which is actually the only thing why you bladestormed is because unrootable, and also you had like the smallest probabilities where you can actually hit those random moral strikes directly and then stop the bladestorm and have huge value from it. But right now they didn't nerfed it and transferred it to bladestorm damage, which is not that great. Again, I think they're not feeling okay. I think it's for me B tier, man. It's good, I guess, because they have some lobbies, but I can't take people serious whenever they're saying like they're like top three hit melees, because in my books they are not top three. They are not even top five. Um, in this current meta, I think Arms Warrior is like one of the squishiest melees, and it seems that they have like some off heals and off shielding because of ignore pain and like those deep wounds healing leech that you have from it and impending victory and such. That's okay, but I think it's still not enough. Like I don't want to have self heals as an arms warrior. I want to have bleeds being meaningful, I guess. I want to have my crit build back, which is not possible right now. And I'm a bit sad for that. I think I'm hitting less than season one, but the HP pools got higher. I can't remember the videos I made about Arms Warrior, and yes, they were very S tier and felt very good. Um, and I already discussed why I prefer Arms Warrior to be meta in general, because I think that it opens up the meta by a lot, by comps, but also by counters. But whenever Arms Warrior is like a bit lower, I think the meta is a bit more miserable for everyone except the higher tiers. Now, the good thing is there are more higher tiers than lower tiers, so the meta is actually going to the right direction. I think Arms Warrior is just not meta. I think it's just good. I think that you can make it work if you're excellent, and also if you have a bit of like lobby luck. But I think it's very frustrating to play. And same for Fury. I think Fury is on the same level as Arms currently. The buffs were placebo buffs. Again, slam, I tested it multiple times, even in soul shuffle. It is just not good. It hits for less than more strike, and more strike is always available. And for fury, it's for even less, even though you're going for all slam options. So do not even think about it. I think it's just not useful. Also, doing damage is quite nice. Ravager doing damage is. Do you even have the talent points to spend on it? Not really. I wish they actually put Ravager a bit higher on the tree so you can actually take it without gimping yourself. But right now, if you're taking it, you're gimping yourself. And there is no real reason because, again, PvP people just move too quickly and you just move away from Ravager and you will not have any value from it except if you're doing Spear of Passion, which is a terrible talent right now because of the duration and the CD. It's too big of a CD to actually make it work for the thing that it is actually. So that is for the warrior specs. Unfortunately, but it is B tier, good tier. It means that not bad. You can make it work, but it is definitely frustrating to play versus a lot of specs. I want to talk about mages. I think I'm going to shoot back Fire Mage again above. I think the buffs are quite nice. I think even with my updated tier list, I felt like I was a bit too harsh with Fire Mage. I think they are actually very good. In Soul Shuffle especially. I'm going to put it in A tier. The damage is too good to be true. Living Bomb is a bit of a beam. Do not take it. You can take it, but it's not going to be like the reason why you win the game. But you can make like a meteor build, which is actually taking Living Bomb, so you can make it work. But I think the one problem for fire mages is they are very squishy. But do not believe the fire mages that are actually saying that glass cannon is bad. It is not bad. It does a lot of damage. Yes, you're sacrificing your HP, but the enemy team also sacrifices their HP because of every single fireball and scorch that you're actually doing. And even scorch is actually very viable to use right now. It does some okay damage. I would arguably say if scorch is doing more damage than a slam, which again, you don't have to spend nearly the amount of points that you have to spend for Arms Warrior to even have the same kind of damage. Also, you will have hot streaks, which is what you're building for. A slam builds for nothing except damage. So Fire Mage, I think it's a meta spec, very good. I think classes in general are very, very good. I think Frost Mage are also A tier. Frostbolts are hitting for a bit more, which is quite nice. But overall, they're still nice. They're very strong. I would even put it a bit higher, but I do rate other specs a bit higher on this list. I think mages are correct. Arcane mage is actually not bad. I think it's B tier. I think they are very annoying to deal with. Even if you're going for the arcane mage, it's actually very hard to kill one. Arcanosphere is a meme. You don't take that, but if you do, you will do some good damage, depending on the maps and depending on the comps. It's harder to play though. It's definitely a tank spec. It looks like a tank spec to me, because again, whenever I'm facing one, it does feel like it's not killable. It also means that they are maybe better than me. It can be, but I think personally, Arcane Mage is better than Affliction Warlock. Pretty clearly for me. Although they are also one schooler, they have like one shot potential, they have damage potential, and sometimes having that potential is enough to actually kill something. They can kill something by themselves very quickly, while other specs don't have that leisure, for example. Let's see real quickly. Um, let's talk about hunters. Hunters. I wanna talk really briefly for hunters. I think Lava Hunter is really high on my list. Um, I want to put it very high. Um, the reason is I'm comparing with survival hunters that are very bad and comparing with survival hunters that are very good. It's very hard for me to put them on a tier list because some people make them feel like they're like one of the better like meaties, top three meaties actually, and some people make them feel like look they're like very bad. They need some help. The damage is very high for survival. I think survival is doing some pretty hefty damage, and they do merit A tier. I would even say top of A tier. I would even say A plus. But I'm going to wait for the end of the tier list to actually decide if I'm going to put it in A plus. I think the damage is really high. I think they do CC pretty easily compared to BM and MM. Their damage is not really stoppable because they are melee and they have like range proportions. They're slippery and they have some ways to again be very annoying in general. Survival Hunter is a great spec. I think the only problem I have with Survival Hunter is the lack of build diversity, but that was the reason since season one really. So I think right now it's probably one of the better times to play Survival Hunter, and I wish they actually like nerfed a bit the damage, and maybe think about like implementing Craven stratagem with somewhat of a counter thing. Like for example, Craven stratagem was a legendary in Shadowlands where you could actually dispel everything, bleeds, and magical effects without counter effect. You could put that and have like a counter effect with look, if you're picking Craven stratagem, you get all the benefits from the legendary from Shadowlands, but you augmenting your CD by 15 seconds, for example. Then you have like more of a strategic use, but you have like a self dispel for multiple things, which again could be quite nice. But I don't know if they're going to do that for survival BM or MM. But it would be nice if they actually think about a way to make that happening in this current meta. BM Hunter, I think they're not bad. I do feel like the damage is just not impressive anymore, in my opinion. Again, they are players that are actually making it work. I feel like they feel bland and they are stoppable because of the current meta. They have a lot of roots, a lot of CC, like makes your pets sometimes like lose their points. I feel like BM Hunter is very one directional, unfortunately, and for that, I'm going to put it in the lowest A tier possible. I would like to put it in B tier, but then I'm comparing it with Destruction Walker or Arcane Mage. I feel like BM Hunter is a lot easier to play, and you can win games because of that. It's actually also doing quite good damage versus classes, although I do feel like they're dependent about a lot of factors, which is being able to CC. And sometimes you cannot CC, and your damage alone is not that impressive, and it's actually like very consistent. You have burst, but it's very consistent. You don't have like a kill shot that is actually doing impressive damage like a Survival Hunter or MM. So again, I feel like lowest A tier. I think it could even be B tier in my opinion. I'm not really scared of BM hunters these days. I'm actually more scared of survival, and that's it. Hunters MM. I think MM. I'm going to get slammed for it. I think they're in this current meta. I think they're A tier. I'm going to explain why. They have above average damage. They have some CC. They have the comfort and discomfort depending on the map. I think with this current meta where you have a lot of classes, you can actually do a rapid fire and run behind the corner and still do the damage. You have rapid, like again, killshot doing a lot of damage. They actually have some okay tier compared to other classes. They are very mobile. Yes, if you spam aim shot all the time and sniper shots, you're going to get stopped, but the damage is really high. I think if you're unchecked, which is a possibility with these classes I'm actually describing, like for example, Frost Mage or MM, who are you going to stop? I guess the Frost Mage because he has some cast time and it's actually interruptible. But then the MM is doing a sniper shot and it's actually decimating your healer or your DPS. It becomes a bit harder to actually decide who you're going for. So I think for me, A tier, it's correct. I think the lowest form of A tier though, for ranged at least. But I think they are like surprisingly good right now in this current meta. If the meta changes, they will be dropping for sure. But for now, I think the meta, how I perceive it, I don't think they are like very low on the tier list. I think A tier is all right, which is the meta. But you see, the meta has most specs because that's how the meta is shaping, right? It's not shaping around 3 specs, it's shaping around a cluster of specs, and they are actually like gravitating towards the god tiers. Let's talk about paladins. I think Retribution Paladin is very strong as well. I'm going to put it in A tier. I want to put it even higher. I might just do this. A plus. I think Retribution Paladin is actually very good. They do like, again, the self heals. I think they most of Retribution Paladins are actually complaining not about the damage but about like the mana and how they are, and how the self heal is like less than, let's say, a warrior, for example. But the damage is carrying them. I think they have also huge CC, and Hammer of Justice is one of the longest stuns in the game, and you can do that on a healer, and it's going to be very effective. You can also play Repentance, and you're going to soak some interrupts, which is good for your healer, or you can play Blind, which is also a very good thing. They have also a lot of comps, they have a lot of utilities, a lot of defensive. Sack is so strong. I think Retribution Paladin is a great space, and I think Survival Hunter, they do deserve like to be top 3, top 4 damage deals. I think like meaties. I think that is representative in how I see the meta currently. Also, Retribution Paladin is the most played melee in social form, and the most represented above 2.4k. Again, I can understand that not everyone is 2.4k, but even above 2k, they are the most represented. So there is a reason for it. I think they're good. I think they're very, very good. They're very fun to play as well. I think it just works very well in this current meta. Facing a Windwalker, you actually have Bob to defend yourself. Facing a Survival Hunter, it's a bit more difficult, but you have still a Bob, you have Sank, you have ways to actually like help your healer out, but also have Sack, so you can also make yourself not seeable by some classes. So in general, I think they are very versatile in this current meta. Resto Druid, Boomkin, the long-awaited Boomkin. So they were god tier in my previous tier list, and they kind of dropped into the A plus tier. I think they are still very good. I think they are very good. I think god tier is now gone. That's my opinion. I'm going to destroy it, and they are the second best caster still in the game. I think the nerfs are pretty heavy on Cyclone, but Cyclone is still the best CC in the game because you only can mass dispel or trinket it. You don't have a dispel that can save your the Cyclone. There is no way to break it by doing damage, for example, or by soaking damage. So it's still one of the better like specs. They have still the damage. Full Moon does hit for a lot less than 20% less because I think I was correct with the calculations on how they did the nerf. So that's a good thing. Also, I think Star Surge is also hitting for less while Eclipse, at least from Celestial Alignment. And in general, I feel like they're still quite good. Not just as oppressive as before, but still oppressive because of how Cyclone is. Feral Druid is good, but not good. I would say they are very represented in social form because there's a lot of like alts from those better ferals. I want to put it in B tier, but then I'm thinking they're not like assassination rogues where you're really dependent on your one CD to actually deal a lot of damage. Because Feral Frenzy, you can actually just like farm it with cyclones. So that's a way. I do feel like they're very squishy. They are highly killable, but so is Unholy Decay in my opinion. And so for that, I'm going to put it in A tier, but in the lowest form of melee A tiers. I think they're very close to B tier. Again, I want to repeat myself, but it's melee ranged healers. So it's from left to right. And if like the last melee is last, they're very close to the B tier. At least that's whenever I'm saying that. I think they're very close to the B tier for Druid because of the meta and how it shapes. Demon Hunter is actually also on the lower parts of A tier. I want to put it in B tier also. They're also like a lot less Demon Hunters. I think the meta is just not shaping that well for them. And Windwalker actually is eating a Demon Hunter alive most of the time. I think they are like suffering. They cannot jump into the sky versus classes, so that's a defensive that doesn't work. I'm gonna I'm hesitating between B or A tier. Are they on the same level as a warrior, or are they on the same level as an enhancement shaman? I think they're pretty much more of the enhancement shaman or subtlety rogue feral druid line. Um, I do feel like the warriors are good, but it's not meta. I feel like Demon Hunter is more meta because of how they deal with classes and how they are actually mobile and they have like a lot of ways to escape CC, which, for example, Arms or Fury Warrior hasn't really escapes. Like he can have like with glimpse from Havoc. They're very close to B tier as well, though. Like those two, but I think Feral a bit more than Havoc. I haven't discussed about Holy Paladin. Excuse me. I think Holy Paladin is also in the top three healers. I do feel like they dropped a few rates because of how they got nerfed on the mana. They do lose on mana games and do lose sometimes because of dampening. I'm going to put it in A tier. They have huge potentials in huge ways to actually um, stop the enemy team. I think just in general, we are set with Holy Paladin as an 8 tier spec. Disc Priest, I think Disc Priest is a fantastic spec, but not in this meta. I think they need a lot of buffs to be competing in Soul Shuffle. Um, they're the worst healer with Resto Druid, in my opinion, Soul Shuffle. They just like the throughput, and throughput is heavy, heavy, heavy. I don't know if I'm harsh by putting in C tier. I want to put it in B tier because a healer is a healer. You kind of need that, but I have to really compare the top healers with Disc Priest. It does feel like Disc Priest is C tier ish, and I would even say Resto Druid as well, which I didn't discuss, but I'm going to put it in C tier as well. Forgot to discuss a bit with the Druid part. I think Disc Priest and Resto Druid has the same problem. They lose mana games. Resto Druid has no way to actually compete with, let's say, damage, and I have no way to actually have the mana throughput and the healing throughput as a Disc Priest, except by going full mastery, which you are then sacrificing your damage potential. Your penance buff is not enough. It is a placebo buff, pretty much. Um, yeah, I think they still can compete. They still can win games, but I think it's really up to you on how to accelerate those games. And if the healer knows what he's doing and he knows, look, this priest really wants to finish the game really fast and he plays super aggressive, well, just chill and try to go for dampening. Then they will have no mana yet left, or they will just not have the juices, like for example, pain suppression, to stop the onslaught. So those two are like equal. For me, it's like Disc Priest or Resto Druid together. Not really from left to right for them. And Holy Priest is also in a bunch of A tiers. I think there is a clear top three, top four. Now, how meta are they? Like how who is first, who is second, who is third? It depends about who you're playing. I'm biased. I think Holy Priest is less annoying than those three. But I can understand why people say Holy Priest is maybe more annoying than those three. They have some good damage though, so don't be surprised to see some damage from the Holy Priest. But for me, I'm going to put it in A tier, regardless of position. So you can actually understand for healers, it's actually very hard to do from left to right. And Shadow Priest is the top alpha spec with Windwalker. I think the meta is SP, Windwalker, then you have Unholy DK, Survival Hunter, Retribution Paladin, which, again, that's also why Unholy DK is actually quite nice. They're actually faring very correctly versus Retribution Paladin. Balanced with Augmentation Evoker, and then you have like your A tiers, your B tiers, C tiers, and D tiers. And for that, I want to look and see, do I want to put Affliction Warlock or Devastation Evoker in B tier? I think I'm going to keep it like that. I hope you guys understand why I've put those specs there. But anyways, this is the end of the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. I hope you guys agree with me. If you don't agree with me, again, tell me why you're not agreeing with me. and then we can have a discussion. I think I've played loads of socials today, and also just in general saw a lot of streams and a lot of opinions I also soaked in. And stats wise, I do feel like right now this is the current state of the game. Again, it can change in 1 week or 2 weeks with nerfs or buffs, but for me right now, social this is the current state of the game. And I will make a twos tier list very soon because I'm playing a lot of twos these days, and I want to make some content for it too. And Unholy DK guide will come up, I hope, tomorrow. Again, I'm promising a lot because I'm always like trying to make it as good as possible. But right now, I'm going to just post this one and see for tomorrow if I can make the Unholy DK guide as how I would like to. Again, thank you. Have a great day. Be sure to stay safe. We'll catch you very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.